I imagine that you are going to be in absolute support of the notion of a general election.
Yeah, I mean the problem with the general election from the Conservatives' point of view, as Michael has just said, I mean, the answer is in his statement, which is that no one knows what the Conservatives stand for anymore, because one minute you have Liz Truss, who wants to slash taxes, and the next minute you have Rishi Sunak, who wants to throw them up. I personally think we should have a general election, because although we live in a parliamentary democracy and we do not vote for prime ministers, it is certainly true that in 2019, a lot of people who voted Tory because Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, and very recently we have had 3 Prime Ministers in under 2 months. That, to me, smacks of chaos. I don't think the Conservatives have the democratic mandate at the moment. There's no constitutional requirement, but I think the right thing to do would be to call an election.
But let's be honest, because if Labour was in power now and this situation had unfolded under the Labour Party, they wouldn't be sitting there listening to the likes of him or whoever saying call a general election. They would be sitting there repeating the point that you've just said, which is we don't have a presidential system, we don't have to have a general election, so we're not going to.
Michelle, you're right, and let's go back to Gordon Brown when he inherited the country from Tony Blair, which was far from ideal, and I voted for New Labour 3 times. Gordon Brown, he got scared. He should have called an election in the autumn of 2007, if you remember. And the reason he didn't was because George Osborne pulled a rabbit out of the hat on inheritance tax, which, interestingly, may go up. Inheritance tax is a really divisive issue, and it can be politically toxic. Gordon Brown chickened out of the election, and I don't think the electorate ever fully trusted him again. And as a consequence, perhaps of that and other things, he lost quite heavily in 2010. The problem the Tories are in is that, in my view, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. For the reasons I've just said, if they call an election now, I suspect they'll be wiped out. If they don't call an election, people won't forgive them.
Michael?
The way I look at the Conservative Party at the moment and why it is largely or somewhat ungovernable by, again, whoever the leader is because it seems to me to be a party that's so factionalised now. It's in 2, maybe 3 or 4 groups. And when, obviously, Rishi Sunak's got a bit of a honeymoon period at the moment, I suspect if he delivers this statement with Jeremy Hunt and, you know, they are jacking up taxes, all hell's going to break loose within the Conservative Party again from those who I would deem to be proper Conservatives who are going to say, wait a second, if you're jacking up taxes, what is the argument against the Labour Party? The Labour Party are going to essentially say the Conservatives are going along with our economic consensus that raising taxes is the right thing to do. And I think that actually fatally undermines what the Conservative Party should be doing, which is making Britain competitive internationally. Don't forget, when it comes to business, when it comes to very rich people, if you tax them too much, they'll go elsewhere.
Will they really go elsewhere? Will they really go elsewhere? Because, may I just quickly ask Michael a question, just to come back on that? If we leave HS2 out, and you can have different views on HS2, if you're forced to choose between people earning 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand, and people earning 150 grand, in some cases £1 million, £2 million, £3 million, to help us out of this, it's not enough, by the way, just to jack it up to 50%. That in itself is not going to work. Who do you choose? Do you side with the people on 20, 30 grand, or the people on 150 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand?
Of course, there is another way to look at this. Rather than just raising taxes all the time, we could actually cut government spending. I know that that's not something that's talked about much anymore. It's not just a matter of raising taxes. Maybe the government should spend less money.
Well, so our hospitals go down
foreign aid budget. Foreign aid budget is about 10 billion a year.
Schools?
Foreign aid budget is about 10 billion a year. Do you think that's right?
I think that the foreign aid budget, and there's very serious questions to be asked, legitimately so, about whether the targets of the foreign aid budget are right, and there's the temptation when you have a fixed amount that you have to spend on foreign aid is that you don't get it right. But the important points about foreign aid is helps boost our exports, helps therefore boost jobs, and also it buys us influence, soft power around the world, so that we can influence other governments and we can become nationally more secure.